The truth is darker than you've ever imagined. A woman can betray everything, her values, her family, even her children. If she believes the man before her is powerful enough to own her chaos, she will surrender. And that's not fantasy. That's biology. That's history. In ancient wars, when a tribe was conquered, the women didn't run. They adapted. They married their enemies and gave birth to their blood, not because they wanted to, but because survival isn't sentimental. And the feminine instinct isn't bound to morals, it's bound to power. She may call you toxic, but if you radiate dominance, if your silence is stronger than her chaos, she will submit. Not out of love, but out of something deeper, something she doesn't understand, but you must. Freud wasn't trying to insult women, he was trying to decode them. He believed that beneath every choice, every emotion, every seduction, there was a war raging between what a woman wants and what she's been trained to want. She doesn't fully understand why she's drawn to danger, why she pulls away when it feels too safe, why she destroys the man who offers her peace, but surrenders to the one who threatens her sanity. Freud saw this not as confusion, but as structure. Her id, her primal core, seeks power, protection, and pleasure. It doesn't care about morality. It doesn't care about your kindness. It only cares, can he dominate my chaos? Her superego, the voice of her culture, her parents, her wounds, judges that desire, shames it, tells her it's wrong. And in between those forces, her ego tries to survive. That's why she runs hot and cold, why she wants you, then attacks you, why she seems emotionally unstable, but always in control of your attention. Because deep in her unconscious, love is not peace. Love is power. If you don't understand this, you'll mistake her tests for affection, her silence for mystery, her confusion for innocence, and you'll miss the one truth she'll never say out loud. She doesn't want to feel safe. She wants to feel claimed. Sigmund Freud didn't start as a rebel. He began as a doctor trying to understand why people suffered. But the deeper he looked into the human mind, the more disturbing the answers became, especially when it came to women. He didn't trust appearances, not smiles, not manners, not even emotion. Because what fascinated Freud was the unconscious, the part of the mind that speaks without words, acts without reason, and wants without permission. And when he began to study female desire, not what women said they wanted, but what they were drawn to, he uncovered something that shattered the social fantasy. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't soft. It wasn't safe. It was raw, primitive, rooted in survival and submission to power. Freud watched women abandon gentle men and obsess over those who triggered their shame, fear, or longing. He noticed their words didn't match their instincts. Their guilt didn't stop their patterns. He called it repression, a defense mechanism that hides what the mind can't accept. Women were repressing their own truth, and society was helping them do it. And when Freud tried to expose it, the world recoiled. He was mocked, censored, even hated, not because he was wrong, but because he was too right. Because no one, not even the woman herself, wants to admit what truly drives her. You think she's ignoring you? That her silence means disinterest? But Freud would tell you this isn't about you. It's about her mind protecting itself from something it can't handle. Her silence is not absence. It's a carefully designed response from her unconscious mind, a defense mechanism. When the id inside her, her primal hunger for connection, wakes up, it terrifies the rest of her. Because deep inside, the little girl she once was still lives. And that girl learned one thing early. Love leads to abandonment. Maybe she cried in a room where no one came. Maybe she reached for her father and found emotional vacancy. That experience didn't vanish. It sank into the unconscious. Now, as an adult, that pain disguises itself as control. It whispers, "Disappear before he gets too close." So when you message her and she doesn't respond yet, still watches your stories, lingers in your shadow, understand you didn't lose her interest. You triggered her unresolved wounds. This is repression in action. Her mind buries the parts of herself that long for you because the superego warns that closeness is danger. The ego tries to mediate. Don't reply, don't feel, stay in control. She doesn't vanish to hurt you. She vanishes to protect the fragile system that keeps her functioning. You're not dealing with a woman. You're dealing with her history, with patterns older than your name in her phone, with the echo of nights she cried alone and told herself, "Never again." And here's the tragic paradox. The more authentic you become, the more dangerous you feel to her unconscious because you bring warmth, and her nervous system was trained to expect cold. You offer presence, but her mind was sculpted by absence. Don't take her silence personally. Take it as a sign of how much she's still fighting herself. And remember, when a woman runs without reason, it's not always fear of you. It's fear of what you awaken. She looks at you like she wants you. Her smile lingers. Her body language draws you in. But just when you step closer, she pulls back. She hints, teases, retreats, and you're left confused, trapped between invitation and rejection. This is not immaturity. It's psychological warfare. And Freud saw it long before Tinder ever existed. He called it the conflict between the id and the superego. The id wants the thrill, connection, intimacy, dominance, surrender. It doesn't care about morality, tradition, or timing. But the superego judges every urge. It whispers shame. Be a good girl. Don't give in. And so the mind splits. This split becomes sexual manipulation. Not always conscious, but always strategic. As a child, she learned that attention equals survival. If she could be desirable, she could be safe. But full surrender? That was never safe. That was punished. Now in adulthood, she seduces without intention. The cleavage, the slow blink, the subtle touch. It activates your masculine chase reflex. She wants to be desired, but not possessed. She wants to be seen, but not claimed. This is what Freud called reaction formation. When someone expresses the opposite of what they truly feel to defend themselves. She may want closeness, but acts distant. She may feel sexual desire, but speaks of boundaries and purity. Because acknowledging the real feeling would shatter her illusion of control. You think she's hot and cold, but in truth, she's split between hunger and fear. Her ego sits in the middle, desperately trying to manage the chaos. It tells her, flirt, but don't commit. Control the narrative. Stay in power. And every time you lean in too much, her unconscious mind screams, run! You can't win this game by playing along. If you chase her body, she'll crucify your soul. But if you understand the script, if you see the performance without reacting to it, you become untouchable. Because a woman can manipulate the man who wants her, but she cannot control the man who knows himself. And that terrifies her more than love ever could. You think she's special because she's rare, because she's different, because she doesn't need anyone. But what you're feeling isn't attraction, it's scarcity. Freud would tell you this isn't about her, it's about what she represents to your unconscious mind, the missing piece of love you never received. When a woman goes cold, becomes distant, detached, your id panics. It screams, don't lose this, fight, prove your worth. But that urge is not coming from love, it's coming from lack. As a child, maybe your mother gave affection inconsistently. Maybe she was emotionally unpredictable, loving one moment, punishing the next. That trained your nervous system to chase approval. You learned that love is something to earn, not receive. So now, when a woman mirrors that same distance, Your unconscious says, "This is familiar, this is home," and you fall for the trap, not because she's special, but because her behavior reactivates an old wound. She doesn't need to say anything. Her silence becomes a mirror, reflecting all the moments you felt invisible as a boy. And you don't just want her attention, you want to heal. But here's the poison. The more scarce she becomes, the more valuable she feels. Not because she's actually rare, but because your brain is wired to equate absence with worth. This is what Freud called displacement. You're not chasing her, you're chasing the emotional ghost of your past. You're not attracted to her, you're addicted to the feeling of trying to matter. And she knows. Even if not consciously, she senses the power. The moment she withholds affection, your masculinity destabilizes. Your self-worth gets outsourced to her attention. But here's the harsh truth. No woman should have that power over your nervous system. Until you stop associating emotional starvation with love, you'll keep crawling back to women who feed you crumbs and make you believe it's a feast. You don't rise by earning her validation. You rise by recognizing the script and refusing to act in it, because true power begins the moment you stop chasing your childhood through the bodies of modern women. She tells you she's ready. She says, "You're the one." She talks about babies, future, marriage. And for a moment you feel chosen, but suddenly something shifts. The dream collapses. She changes her mind, or worse, blames you for the very thing she promised. What just happened? Freud called this projection the unconscious act of displacing inner conflict onto someone else. She wasn't lying to you, she was lying to herself. And you were just the stage she performed it on. In the beginning, her id was awakened. Her instinctual desire to attach, to be desired, to imagine a future. But as that vision grew closer to reality, her superego, the inner critic shaped by family, trauma, and fear, began to whisper, "You're not ready. He'll leave. This will end badly." That internal war created dissonance, and instead of facing it, she projected it onto you. Suddenly, you became the unstable one. You became the reason she couldn't trust love. You became the excuse her unconscious needed to escape. This isn't new. As children, when emotions were too overwhelming, our minds created narratives to protect us. Women who experienced emotional abandonment or pressure growing up often develop a deep fear of actual commitment, but they still crave the illusion of it, the fantasy, the safety, the identity of being wanted. So they borrow your stability to create their fantasy, and then destroy it the moment reality arrives. It's reaction formation. She acts like she wants family loyalty forever, but unconsciously fears the vulnerability it demands. So, she flips, sabotages, tells herself, "I was wrong about him," when in truth, she was never clear about herself. And here's where most men collapse. They internalize the guilt, try to fix what was never theirs to fix, beg to prove their worth inside someone else's inner war. But you cannot win a battle that lives inside her unconscious. You cannot save someone from the lies they need to believe. The wise man doesn't argue with her switch. He recognizes the script and exits the theater. Because a woman who projects her chaos onto you is not building a life. She's building a shield, and you are the casualty it's made from. She mocks you, dismisses your masculinity, calls you arrogant, cold, controlling. She says, "I could never be with a man like you." And yet she keeps showing up, keeps circling, keeps watching. This isn't confusion. It's reaction formation. Freud's term for when a person expresses the opposite of what they truly feel. Because the truth is too dangerous to admit. What she hides is attraction. What she fears is submission. What she disguises as contempt is an aching, suffocating need for masculine dominance. Her words are a mask, but her biology doesn't lie. She critiques the very traits her id craves: strength, mystery, power. Why? Because she was never taught how to love what she desires, only how to fear it. Maybe she grew up under the weight of a weak father or the grip of an overbearing one. Maybe she learned that wanting a powerful man made her less than, or not feminist enough, or just another girl giving in. So her superego, that voice shaped by social judgment and internal shame, launches a defense. He's toxic, he's unsafe, he's probably a narcissist. It's easier to shame the desire than to surrender to it. So she attacks you with words, hoping they'll kill the part of herself that wants to be claimed. And every time you hold your frame, every time you refuse to bend to her emotional noise, she hates you more. But that hatred is laced with arousal, because your masculine stillness is the very gravity her chaos secretly longs for. This is where men fall into the trap. They start defending themselves, explaining, apologizing. They try to correct the image she projects, not realizing they've just submitted to it. But the man who understands projection never reacts to the insult. He listens to what her unconscious is really saying. Your presence makes me feel things I was trained to suppress. And the only response to that is silence, stillness, power, because when a woman tries to fight you for the control she secretly wants you to take, you don't negotiate, you don't retreat, you don't chase, you just hold. And in that holding, her mask begins to crack. You thought you wanted her, but if you strip away the beauty, the curves, the chaos, what's left? A pattern, a familiar ache, a reenactment. Freud said, "The unconscious mind repeats what it never resolved, that we seek out the same pain not because we enjoy suffering, but because suffering feels like home." And that's the illusion. You weren't chasing a woman, you were chasing the ghost of your unmet needs, the woman who ignores you, who pulls you close, then disappears, who mirrors your mother's absence or your father's coldness. She feels real because she activates the boy inside you. The one who still believes if I can get her to love me, I'll finally be enough. But that was never her job. And the deeper betrayal isn't hers, it's yours. You betrayed yourself the moment you made her the solution to your inner void. And worst of all, you believed that if you suffered just right, if you played the role just well enough, you'd finally be chosen. But you weren't in love. You were hypnotized by emotional scarcity, by unhealed memory, by the secret hope that if you could fix her, you'd repair the boy. And that's why it keeps breaking you. Because no woman can mother the man who won't father himself. The illusion was never her attention. It was the belief that your worth depends on it. You don't fight the game by reacting. You end the game by leaving the arena. The woman who tests, withholds, seduces, and withdraws. She's not your opponent. She's a mirror. And your only job is to stop flinching when you see your reflection. Freud taught that real power doesn't come from repression, but from sublimation. Taking your chaotic instincts, the hunger, the need, the ache, and redirecting them into something higher, so you feel the urge to chase her. Pause, hold that fire and aim it at your becoming, because the man she cannot manipulate is not the one who wins her, it's the one who doesn't need to. While she's posting stories to provoke you, you're building muscle, physical, mental, spiritual. While she's measuring her worth in attention, you're sharpening your purpose in solitude. Let your silence become surgical. Let your indifference carry the weight of a man who remembers who he is. Your ego is no longer negotiating between your id's cravings and her superego's games. It stands grounded in reality, not hers, not society's, but yours. Because emotional sovereignty means this: you feel everything, but obey nothing that doesn't serve your path. You no longer seek women who test your value. You attract women who recognize it because it's carved into your presence. And if they don't, you stay unmoved, not because you're cold, but because your warmth is earned, not extracted. The feminine isn't healed by being worshipped. She's healed by witnessing a man who will not fold. Not for beauty, not for guilt, not for loneliness. And that man is born the moment you choose yourself over her attention, over her confusion, over the comfort of being chosen by someone who hasn't chosen themselves. You don't need her to understand. You don't need closure. You don't need a conversation, a text, or an apology. Because silence is its own answer, and clarity is its own revenge. Let her play her games. Let her confuse herself with freedom. Let her run from the fire she secretly prayed for. You are not here to be understood by chaos. You are here to transcend it. Every man must one day walk away, not with anger, not with pain, but with a strange, sacred stillness, the kind that only comes when you stop chasing ghosts. She was never yours. She was a reflection of your forgotten wound, and now you no longer bleed for mirrors. You don't punish her. You don't fix her. You don't wait for her to grow. You disappear with dignity, with depth. Because the greatest threat to a woman who manipulates is not a man who resists her. It's a man who no longer reacts at all. And that is where her power ends, and yours begins. This is where the true test lies. The strength a man must find within himself is not the one that bends to the chaos around him, not the one that chases approval or validation. It's the strength to stand firm in his own identity, unwavering in his purpose, and resolute in his choices. The woman who tests, manipulates, and pulls back isn't truly testing you. She's testing your ability to hold your ground, to exist outside of the emotional cycles she's been conditioned to create. She wants to see if you will fold, if you will submit to the chaos, if you will surrender to the emotional turmoil that she unconsciously seeks to invoke. But the man who understands this is never moved. He doesn't flinch at her games, doesn't react to her emotional upheavals, because he understands that his worth is not tied to her approval, her affection, or her validation. When you stop reacting to her behaviors, you break free from the cycle of emotional manipulation. Your presence alone becomes a force that she cannot control. This is where the power shift occurs. She can manipulate the man who is desperate for her affection, who is constantly seeking her approval, but she cannot control the man who has mastered himself. The man who knows his worth, who stands firm in his identity, who is not swayed by emotional highs and lows, becomes an unshakable force. And that terrifies her because, for all the power she believes she has, she will never have control over someone who is not dependent on her. The truth is, the moment you stop needing her, the moment you stop seeking her validation, the moment you choose yourself over her, is the moment you begin to transcend the game entirely. The emotional volatility, the tests, the confusion, all of it loses its power over you. She may still try to provoke you, still throw her emotional bombs, still play her games, but they no longer affect you in the way they once did, because you have learned to walk away from the arena, and in doing so, you reclaim your power. There's a deep paradox in all of this. The more you stop chasing, the more attractive you become, not because you're playing some kind of game, but because your energy becomes magnetic. The more you focus on your own growth, your own purpose, your own journey, the more you radiate an energy that draws people to you. Not out of need, but out of genuine interest. You stop being a player in her game, and instead you become the observer, the one who stands outside the chaos, watching with clarity and purpose. But let's not be mistaken here. This is not about manipulation, not about playing games. It's about emotional sovereignty, the ability to stay grounded in your own truth, no matter how much chaos or noise surrounds you. It's about learning to not be affected by the distractions, the emotional tests, the games that people, especially women who are in the throes of their own unconscious battles, play. And in this space of stillness, you find your true power. A man who understands emotional sovereignty doesn't seek to control others. He doesn't manipulate situations to his advantage. He doesn't react to the chaos, because he knows that true power lies in the ability to remain grounded, centered, and unshaken in his own self-worth. And in that space, he becomes the kind of man that women can't help but be drawn to, not because of his power over them, but because of his unarguable duty over himself. It's the man who stands firm in his truth, who doesn't bend under pressure, who doesn't fall for the illusions of emotional neediness or manipulation, who ultimately wins. This is not a victory that comes from conquering a woman. It's a victory that comes from conquering yourself. It's about learning that you don't need anyone to validate your worth. You are complete as you are, and your journey is not dependent on anyone else's approval. This is the true essence of masculinity, the ability to remain firm in the face of chaos, to remain emotionally sovereign, to not chase after validation or approval, but to stand tall in your own truth. And in doing so, you will attract those who recognize this strength, this power, and this self-assurance. You will attract women who see you not as a source of validation, but as a partner who understands their own worth and doesn't need to play games to feel secure. It's important to understand that the games she plays are not personal. They are a reflection of her own internal battles, the unresolved emotional wounds, and the patterns that have been ingrained in her unconscious mind over a lifetime. These patterns are often so deeply embedded that they are not even recognized by her conscious mind. They come out in the form of emotional withdrawal, manipulation, and even emotional explosions. And while it may feel personal in the moment, it's important to remember that it's not about you. It's about the internal chaos she's struggling with. A man who understands this does not take her emotional games personally. He sees them for what they are, reflections of her internal struggles, and he remains unfazed. He recognizes that her behavior is a defense mechanism, a way to protect herself from the pain she has not yet healed. And rather than reacting, he remains calm, centered, and grounded. This is where true power lies. It's not about being cold or indifferent. It's about being emotionally stable, emotionally sovereign. It's about not allowing her emotional turmoil to destabilize your sense of self, and not allowing her emotional games to control your actions. You remain steady, unshaken, and unresponsive to the chaos. And in doing so, you become the one who holds the power in the relationship. Not because you manipulate or control her, but because you control yourself. When you stop reacting to her emotional fluctuations, you give her the space to face her own internal battles. You stop being a part of the drama. You stop being a pawn in her unconscious game, and in that space, she is left to confront her own wounds and unresolved issues. This is not your job to fix. It is her journey. And by choosing yourself, by refusing to react to her tests, you allow her the space to heal on her own terms. A man who understands this principle is no longer caught up in the emotional cycles of chasing or withdrawing. He is grounded in his own purpose, his own journey, his own truth. And when he meets someone who recognizes his strength, his emotional sovereignty, his self-assurance, he can engage in a partnership that is built on mutual respect and understanding, rather than manipulation and emotional games. This is the ultimate victory, the victory of emotional sovereignty, of standing firm in your own truth, of being untouchable by the chaos that others try to bring into your life. It's about no longer seeking validation from others, but from within. It's about choosing yourself over the illusion of external validation, over the emotional scarcity that has held you captive for so long. When you step into your true power, you transcend the need for anyone to complete you. You become complete in yourself. And in that space of wholeness, You attract the people who recognize that completeness, who see your strength and respect it, not because you demand it, but because it is the natural result of standing firm in your own power. The woman who truly sees you will recognize that strength, that emotional sovereignty, and will be drawn to you not out of need, but out of respect for the man you have become. The greatest lesson Freud taught us was that the unconscious mind often holds the key to understanding our deepest desires and fears. And in recognizing those unconscious patterns, we can choose to transcend them. We can choose to stop chasing the ghosts of our past and start living in the present, grounded in our own truth. When we do that, we not only free ourselves from the manipulations of others, but we also become the kind of person who can truly love and be loved in return. And that, ultimately, is the greatest power of all. This journey toward emotional sovereignty and self-awareness isn't just about understanding others, it's about understanding yourself first. The more you cultivate self-awareness, the more you begin to see patterns in your own behavior, patterns that have been shaped by your upbringing, your past relationships, and your own unconscious needs. Once you understand these patterns, you can start to break free from them. This isn't about blaming anyone else, but rather taking full responsibility for your emotional landscape. You start to realize that you don't need anyone to complete you, to validate you, or to give you permission to be whole. When you are emotionally sovereign, you stop playing the game of needing to chase love or approval. You stop seeking validation from the outside world and start to find it within yourself. This shift in perspective changes everything. No longer are you driven by the need to please others or to prove your worthiness. You are simply driven by your own path, your own growth, and your own sense of purpose. You stop living for others and start living for yourself. This self-awareness and sovereignty extend into every aspect of your life, not just in your relationships with women, but with everyone you encounter. You no longer allow anyone to define you or your value. You stop allowing people's opinions, judgments, or emotional manipulations to influence how you see yourself. You know who you are, and you're no longer willing to compromise that for anyone. This becomes a powerful force in your life. You radiate a calm, a confidence, and a strength that others can sense. You become untouchable, not because you're closed off, but because you've learned to hold your ground in a world that often demands you compromise your integrity, your values, and your sense of self. This doesn't mean you become emotionally cold or distant. Quite the opposite, in fact. Emotional sovereignty means you can be fully present, fully engaged, and fully open with others without being swayed by their emotional volatility. You can love deeply, but you do so from a place of power, not need. You no longer attach your happiness to someone else's actions or emotions. You can give love without expecting anything in return, because you are whole within yourself. In relationships, this shift in mindset allows for a deeper, more authentic connection. You no longer seek to control or be controlled. You no longer need to test or manipulate to feel loved or valued. Instead, you engage from a place of mutual respect, where both partners are free to be their true selves without the pressure of proving worth or chasing approval. When two people come together from this place of self-sufficiency and emotional sovereignty, the relationship becomes an exchange of love, energy, and growth, rather than a cycle of manipulation, control, and dependency. This emotional freedom is what Freud was trying to understand when he studied the unconscious mind. He recognized that beneath the surface of our conscious thoughts and desires lay powerful primal instincts and motivations that drive us. He understood that, for many people, these unconscious forces are what shape our behavior, our choices, and our relationships. By bringing these unconscious drives to the surface, we can begin to understand why we do the things we do, why we are drawn to certain people and situations, and why we behave in ways that seem contradictory to our conscious desires. In a way, Freud was not just attempting to decode the minds of women, but of humanity in general. He was looking at the deeper layers of the human psyche, the ones that operate beneath our conscious control. He was trying to uncover the fundamental truths about why we act the way we do, why we seek power, love, and connection in the ways that we do, and why we struggle with our emotions and desires. What Freud discovered was that many of these struggles are deeply rooted in our primal instincts, the desire for dominance, submission, protection, pleasure, and survival. These are the forces that drive us at the deepest levels, whether we are aware of them or not. And once we begin to understand these primal instincts, we gain the power to transcend them. We can choose to not be controlled by them, not to be slaves to our unconscious desires. Instead, we can use our understanding of them to navigate our lives with intention and purpose. This is what emotional sovereignty is all about. It's about taking control of your life by understanding your deepest desires, your unconscious patterns, and your emotional triggers. And once you understand these, you can choose how to respond to them rather than being controlled by them. By taking responsibility for your own emotional state, you stop being at the mercy of others. You stop waiting for someone else to give you validation or approval. Instead, you give that to yourself. You stop seeking external validation and start looking within. When you do this, you stop reacting to the emotional games that others may try to play. You stop chasing after the woman who withholds affection, who plays hot and cold, who tries to manipulate you into proving your worth. Instead, you focus on your own growth, your own purpose, and your own path. You become a man who is so sure of himself that no one can shake your sense of self-worth. This doesn't mean you cut yourself off from love or relationships altogether. Quite the opposite. It means that when you do enter into a relationship, you do so from a place of strength, not need. You enter the relationship with your own sense of self-worth already intact. You no longer look to your partner to complete you or to validate you. Instead, you come together as two whole individuals who are capable of loving and supporting each other without losing themselves in the process. This is the true essence of healthy relationships. They are not about one person needing the other to feel whole or validated. They are about two individuals coming together to share love, growth, and support. They are about mutual respect and understanding. And when both people in the relationship have emotional sovereignty, the relationship becomes one of mutual empowerment. Each person stands firm in their own identity, their own worth, and their own path. And together, they create a space where both individuals can thrive, grow, and love freely, without the need to control or manipulate each other. As you continue on this journey toward emotional sovereignty, remember that this is not a destination. It's a lifelong process of growth, understanding, and evolution. You will continue to face challenges, emotional triggers, and old wounds that try to pull you back into old patterns. But with each challenge you face, you will become stronger, more self-aware, and more emotionally sovereign. You will learn to navigate life with clarity, strength, and purpose, no longer controlled by unconscious drives or emotional manipulations. And as you become more grounded in your own emotional sovereignty, you will attract the right people into your life. You will no longer chase after relationships that drain you, that pull you into emotional chaos or manipulation. Instead, you will attract people who resonate with your energy, who see you for who you truly are, and who respect you for your emotional sovereignty. And when you find that, you will know that you have truly transcended the emotional games and manipulations that once held you captive. In the end, emotional sovereignty is about reclaiming your power to choose, your power to love, your power to be who you truly are. It's about no longer being at the mercy of others, or of your own unconscious mind. It's about standing firm in your truth, knowing that you are enough, and not needing anyone else to validate that. When you reach this level of emotional mastery, you will no longer chase love or approval. You will simply attract it, naturally, because it will flow from the deep, unshakable foundation of self-worth that you've built within yourself. And in that space, you will finally be free. Free to love, free to grow, free to live your life on your own terms, without being held captive by the patterns of the past. Free to step into your own power and become the man you were always meant to be. The journey to emotional sovereignty is not an easy one, but it is the most rewarding path you can walk. Because when you choose yourself, when you stop seeking validation and start creating your own reality, you become unstoppable, and that is where true power lies.